Chapter 4. The Presentation. The Sison rolled majestically on, its reddish waves swelled by the equinoctial rains.
Note, the Sison is a small river which flows between Nazareth and Mount Carmel. Shallow and insignificant in summer, like all the watercourses of Palestine, it becomes a considerable stream during the rainy season. The troops of Sisera, general of the army of Jabin, were drowned in the swollen waters of this river, while trying to force a passage.
And the green mountains of Galilee were beginning to put on their snowy covering, when Mary's parents undertook the journey to Jerusalem. There is no knowing the motive which induced them to leave their native province during the rainy season. It might be that they wished to assist at the grand solemnities of the Feast of the Dedication. Or perhaps it was that they simply regulated their departure by the period of Zachary's service in the temple, which only took place at regular intervals.
Note, according to the ordinance of David, the priests were divided into 24 classes, or courses, each of which served its week. Each course was subdivided into 7 parties, of which each officiated in its turn. Each individual of these parties had his share of the service assigned to him by lot. Zacharias belonged to the course or service of Abbe.
Having before them a journey of several days, in the midst of the rainy season with an infant child, the pious and prudent travelers journeyed not towards the holy city by the wild and pebbly road which winds amid the arid plains, the foamy torrents and deep ravines of the mountains of Samaria where the frosts of winter had already set in. They descended by the woody slopes of Carmel, into the charming plains which extend between the mountains of Palestine and the coasts of Syria, that fair and favored region, whose climate is so mild that the orange trees blossom in the depth of winter, and the flowers of summer bloom in December.
Note, Volney mentions having seen, on the coasts of Syria, orange trees loaded with fruit in the open air, in the month of January. With us, says he, nature has divided the seasons by months. There, it may be said, that they are only divided by hours. At Tripoli, we suffer from the excessive warmth of July. 6 hours' journey brings us to the adjacent mountains, where the air has the temperature of March. On the other hand, we are chilled by the frost of December. In the mountain districts, a day's journey brings us to the shore, where we find the summer flowers in bloom.
Having left behind them the rich pasturage lands, where rose of old the tents of Issachar, that race of pastoral astronomers.
Note, St. Jerome says that the sons of Issachar were the sages who made the chronological calculations and marked the festivals. This tradition agrees with that of the rabbins, who relate that the tribe of Issachar were much given to the study of astronomy. Finally, the scripture authorizes this tradition, since it mentions that the sons of Issachar knew all times to order what Israel should do,
whom the burning breath of the wrath of God had scattered, like a handful of straw, over the wild and mountainous regions of Media, having admired as they passed the groves of palms, banana trees and pomegranates clothing the hills, which were once the fair inheritance of the children of Joseph, that noble and warlike race, renowned for their skill in archery. Our Galilean travelers sped along by the small stream of Gas, overhung by its graceful willows, traversed the groves of Ramatha, that pretty town, which resembles a cameo laid in a basket of roses, and at length gained the confines of the ancient territory of the Jebusites. There, all was changed. No more flowers, no more verdure, no more balmy breezes, laden with the perfumes of the citron tree. All around were sterile rocks, profound ravines through which the wind swept in mournful murmurs, abrupt and craggy mountains, resounding with the hoarse cry of the eagle. In a word, a landscape the grandest, the most desolate, and the most cheerless that can well be imagined. The little party had been following, for some time, a rugged path which crossed the tableland of a barren mountain, when Joachim suddenly stopped at an abrupt turn of the road, and stretched his arm towards the south with an emotion of religious exultation mingled with national pride. The object which he thus pointed out to his companions was well worthy of being remarked, for Asia had then nothing more magnificent or fantastic. It was a city about 33 stadia in circumference, set in stone like a ruby of Baluchistan, a city of marble, of cedar, and of gold, whose splendor had in it something gloomy, ferocious and suspicious, denoting an unsettled power and a permanent dread of the stranger, a state of things abounding in strange contrasts. There were seen enormous towers, magnificent as palaces, and palaces fortified like citadels. Its temple, radiant with gold, stood glittering on a narrow tableland of the highest mountain, like the full-orbed moon when it rises over the snowy heights of Lebanon.
Note, the exterior front of the temple was so thickly covered with plates of gold that, when the day began to appear, it was no less dazzling than the rays of the rising sun. As for the other sides, where there was no gold, their stones were so white that, at a distance, that superb pile of building looked like a mountain covered with snow.
It was an almost impregnable fortress, held in awe by the people of God, whilst the Tower of Antonia, with its 4 elegant turrets of polished marble, kept jealous and unceasing watch over the precincts of the temple, a triple enclosure of massive stone walls.
Extrema rupis abrupta, et turres, ubi mons hubis set, in sexaginta pedes, inter devexa, in centenos vicenos que atoyevantur. Mira especie, hace proculintuentibus pares.
Translation: the edge of the cliff was sheer, and where the hill had aided, towers rose to a height of 60 feet on the slopes, and to 120 feet on the level ground, a wondrous sight, and from a distance, appearing of equal height.
With 90 forts, encompassed that singular city, and all around it lay gloomy valleys, dizzy heights and inaccessible rocks. That stately and warlike city, which seemed as though it were transported by magic from the fabulous regions of Jinnistan.
Note, Jinnistan, which is placed by the marvelous legends of the Arabs and Assyrians, at the foot of Mount Caucasus on the shores of the Caspian Sea, was the abode of the Paris, a fair and fabulous race bearing much resemblance to our fairies. These powerful beings, born before the deluge, were supposed to command the elements, and to create whatever they wished. Their capital city, which they had carefully fortified in order to keep off the incursions of the Dives, a formidable race of evil spirits, was of marble, gold, rubies, and diamonds.
To be placed under the cloudless sky of Palestine was that Jewish paradise, Gung Dixhaupt, so poetically mourned on the banks of the Euphrates, the city of David and the Maccabees, that Jerusalem which, even in its slavish abjection, is still hailed throughout the East by the ancient appellation, then given it by the father of Mary, El-Quds, the Holy City. The parents of the Virgin entered the capital of Judea by the gate of Ramah, which was shaded by a tower, Sephana, so lofty that its flat roof commanded a view of Mount Carmel, the Great Sea, and the mountains of Arabia. From its summit still floated the green banner of Judah's Maccabeus with its sacred device, no longer understood by the soldiers who kept guard around, for they were Thracians, Galatians, Germans, and the fair-haired sons of Gaul, whom Herod, in his fear of the Jews, kept always in pay, and who were almost as odious to the people as himself. The travelers then took their way through some dark and winding streets, bordered with heavy-looking square houses, without windows, their flat roofs forming long unbroken lines that looked like fortifications, and stopped in the eastern part of the city, in front of a house of unpretending appearance, pointed out by tradition as the dwelling of Saint Anne.
Note, a monastery was erected on this house of Saint Anne, but it has since been converted into a mosque. Under the Christian kings, it was inhabited by nuns.